Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock. Well, 7:08 on a Thursday. So here we are on the Erudition Network for the Interactive Black History and Knowledge session. I am your host, Eddie Phillips. I am here every Thursday. This is one of our new times. We've been doing this for the last, has it been 3 weeks? I think it has. I think it's been 3 weeks now that we have now come on at 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, where we are here to go over some history. This has been a crazy day, but I didn't know if we were going to be able to be on today because I had so much going on earlier today. I was out, but I am back and we are here. Tonight, we're going to try to cover some things a little differently. As always, I'm going to allow you your time to ask questions about history and bring up subjects that maybe you are curious about. But at the same time, we're going to cover some things that if I don't hear from you all, that I think are important for us to talk about as far as knowledge, as far as history. I'm sorry, I'm cleaning my glasses. As far as history goes, and clear up some misconceptions as we always do. And I hope that you walk away from this hour-long session with more knowledge than you had when you came in the door or when you sat down to watch the program. So that's always the hope, and that's always what we aim to do here on the Erudition Network. I saw earlier that StreamYard said it was having problems with Facebook accounts. So if you are running into issues commenting or seeing things on Facebook, please feel free to join us on the YouTube channel. We are also streaming on YouTube. I believe we're also streaming on X. So you can go look for us there also, and you should be able to comment and say whatever it is that comes to your mind that you would like to say. Good to see you. I see we have Eric, and I see Sean Anthony. You're in here. Good to see you. Eric, good to see you. Thank you for supporting the show and being in here on this session. As always, I would ask you all to share, and get that information out there so we can bring in more viewers and try to consistently break that double-digit viewers weekly, as opposed to occasionally. We went to a later time to try to accommodate those who can't watch. And so I would hope that we'd be able to do that and bring people in. But if we're not, I understand that too. Things happen. People have schedules and things not. So please feel free to also, if you're watching it later, to share also. Share the program. All right. As always, I'm going to open up the floor and ask you all what questions you may have as we go into this session. Before I go into, I look kind of crazy. Before I go into any subjects that are on my mind. So if you have something that you are that you like to ask, some history that you like to clear up, now is the time in the program. In the beginning and at the end of the program, we try to open up the floor for that, for you to ask those questions. Whatever is on your mind, historically, Black history preferably, but we can do any history, it's fine. And we'll get into it. So who has a question? Anybody? Anything? We got 3 people there, so I know one of y'all got a question. One of y'all got something. Nothing. Look, when you come in here, we all know every week that I'm going to ask you for any questions. So hopefully you will have something. If not, that's okay, you all. I'm not going to press you, but I just want to always make sure we keep this program interactive and we try our best to give you some time. Come on, y'all sure y'all got something. All right, well, if nobody got anything, since it seems like nobody who's here currently has anything, let me say this. I dealt with something today, and I didn't really know where I was gonna go with this show tonight. Um, I kind of bounced around different ideas, and then I said, I think I'm gonna go as I'm led and go from there and kind of stay with our history and but give it a different push here, right? So tonight I want to talk about relationships in Black history, predominantly relationships between parents, rather that be mother, son, and daughter, or mother and daughter, whatever. But I really want um, to start to look at these contributions made by families. Sean Anthony, you had a question. You was must have been typing for a while. Why do they say that the Mayans just up and disappear? I mean, they are fairly advanced. However, one day they just disappeared. Well, here's the rub, Sean Anthony, with a lot of um, history out here, and I know we've probably said this before, but it is worth mentioning that a lot of times what happens is that they don't really have a, when I say they, the historians of the last um, few hundred years, that's being generous, have basically decided, they made decisions based on race, bigotry, and issues. And so when you look at these ancient communities like the Olmecs, the Mayans, and different ones like that, um, they don't want to say where these people migrated from. They also try to hide what we are starting to uncover evidence of other cultures, specifically African and cultures touching down in areas of the early Americas and influencing those communities. So when someone says that these people just up and appeared and then they disappeared, and then they lie about the technology, even though the technology and the architecture and everything else resembles a lot of things that we see um, in African and Eastern influences, then we start to realize that, yeah, there is a lie, a deliberate attempt to hide information. And so I like that you pointed out that they were fairly advanced. It's not saying that advanced cultures can't vanish and that they can't up and leave, but what it does say is that why is it that every time we start to dig and start to see African influences or influences that are other than European, um, that we decide then to pretend that these things don't exist or these people just went away. And so it's an important thing um, to consider. But that's a good question. In your book, you talk about how diverse groups came together to establish great civilizations that contribute to how society functions, such as the capital Elam. So if you um, picked up my book, 101 Questions, early um, ancient times or early you get what I'm saying, early history. Um, you will see that these civilizations did come together and that they did contribute to each other. And then you will start to understand the migration as people went from one area, came out of Africa, went east, populated north, and they just continued across the globe. You will see how that influence played out in both language and trade and skills and architecture and all of that. I guess my question would be, what civilization and history contribute the most in your opinion? Well, all civilizations contribute, but here's the thing: when you look at cultures and nations and things like that, and you see the migration out of Africa as people move east, and you start to see how African cultural roots and influences played into Sumar, played into Sheba, played into uh, uh, um, all of these different cultures as the people of the Indus Valley. Even as we go into Asia, you start to see and you get from that book how they touched all of these different cultures through trade, through innovation. Um, and so I can't say exact. I will say that at the start of it, Africans contributed a lot more than what we are told that they contributed. And I guess that's what the big thing is. Who's what was hidden from us, and what didn't we get um, due to the fact that people wanted to keep secrets, right? And they wanted to keep it European. So, but that also is a good question, and I hope I answered some of it. I can't tell you that every culture presents something new to the pot, right? But I will say that there would be no pot without the people of Africa who helped to inspire, who started basically the inciting moment, how everything happened. But that was a very good question and a very good plug for the book that I hope people will go out and continue to buy and get and learn as we go forward. So, is there any other questions? Is there any other questions? I see we lost somebody, but is there any other questions in here that anybody may have in regards to history as we go through? We've been on 15 minutes now. Go through the rest of this evening. Anything that you want to ask, we're here to go over this history together. So whatever you want to consider, um, there's two really good questions that were just asked. Please do so and interact. And if not, we'll move on to another section of something that maybe I would like to discuss. And that's all good too. More questions will come as I continue to read. Yeah, I get it. I get 101 questions, and then there's a lot of information within the book. Look, I mentioned earlier what I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about um it's funny that we talk about inspiration. Um One of the things that I was focused on today um was the idea of how we inspire or we continue to grow the next generation. For parents, it's your children. For families, it's your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, and how we grow that. The Black community, specifically, as I focus tonight on the American Black community, often has no history of how, or we don't talk about how people inspire others. You know, we had two presidents that one was father and the other was son. Um, John Adams was the second president of the United States. And years later, his son, John Quincy Adams, became a president of the United States. And there's reasons why John Quincy Adams obviously um, became a president, but what it really comes down to is the idea of the inspiration that he had as far as statesmanship that he got from his father and his mother, right? John Quincy Adams had a very good start in life from his parents. His father was, as I said, the second president of the United States. He was a key founding father and making sure that monies and things were given towards the revolution as it was happening. His mother, Abigail Adams, um, was a prolific intellectual and writer, and made sure that her children um, had the same inspiration and education. So it was not surprising to have a son that would become a president. All right, I see another question is here. Is there any substance in the legends of golden cities and such that we're told to be found in the New World? I.e., the Americans. Oh, obviously, there's gold in those areas because we still mine some of that gold. Um, but the Americas have always been a place where people see the idea of gold. And it is not just because the Mesoamericans or the American, the indigenous people over here um, obviously had gold, and we saw it in their cultures and their statues and things like that. But it is also because something that we hardly ever talk about is that the Africans who came over here, particularly those from Mali, and I write about that in my book, the Portuguese and the Arabs, the Muslims, they knew that there was gold being traded across the Atlantic. There's a really great book from a guy named Thornton. It's called Africa and Africans in the Making of the Atlantic World, 1400 to 1800. Great book. You should go out there and go get that book and go read that book. But to let you understand how much activity was actually going on in the Atlantic, right? From Africa and the Africans, and how they were trading across the Atlantic. We're not really ever told that, and we don't spend much time looking at the interaction and the possibility of Africans even coming over in boats is often just pushed aside by many historians. And they say, well, the people in Americas, they got here over land bridges millions of years ago, and that the fact of the matter is that's how they got down there, and they were some of the last people. And that is true. They may have been some of the last populous people um, as far as migration, but that's just from theory and how we look um, at how DNA has been shared and it's traced over here as it changes over time we can look at that. But we can also see migration that comes over shipwise because they had ships, right? That took people from one area of Africa over to the Americas. The difference is they didn't come to conquer. So the gold that was here, they were shown how to shape it, how to mold it. You know, I've often talked about how when Columbus got to Hispaniola, um, the people, the Taino people, told him that Africans, black people, people of black face, had shown them how to to coat their spears with gold. So when you ask her, is there any truth of legends of gold? Yes, those legends come from things because people knew that there was gold over it and that there was interest in it. And it is one of the reasons why during the era of exploration, Portugal signed, along with other states, an agreement, right, in the age of discovery, of what they would be able to own and take care of and use, and what the Spanish would. So yeah, there's a lot of history to that. Good question, Sean Anthony. Good question. Um, Getting back to what I was saying, unless you guys got more questions. If you got more questions, type them in there and I will answer them as I see them. No, I was going through and I just started listing things that I knew from history. You know, you have we talked about, you know, the atoms, right? But if you look at people like Benjamin O. Davis Sr. and Benjamin O. Davis Jr., and you look at how both of them were instrumental in our military and how one inspired the other. You can look even in our current time, right? How people, I was reading an article the other day from Malcolm X's daughter, Kabila, right? And how she took up this mantle to be a agent of social justice because of her father, right? And how she decided that she was going to go um, and take things further and challenge things. You have so many people in the history of Black history who have done these things, who have that we don't talk about, right? That we don't give credit to. Thurgood Marshall is another one. I was reading the other day um, how Thurgood Marshall became the first African American Supreme Court justice. Here's the thing, though. Thurgood Marshall's father was a regular guy, but he taught his son what that, because they were very fair skinned, they could almost pass for white. His father could definitely. Um, how to carry himself, how to carry himself, and how to make sure that the things that he did were honorable and of keeping with his race. To never forget that he was, his intelligence and his grooming and who he was should be used to be a voice for his people legally, right? And Thurgood Marshall used to be called Mr. Civil Rights because he went all over the country and he got people out of jail, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being one. And he kept the law right, right? But the way it worked was that Thurgood Marshall, his son, Thurgood Marshall Jr., also became a prominent civil rights lawyer, right? And then worked as an associate White House counsel for Bill Clinton. What's my point? We have a duty to make sure that we inspire the next generation. It's the reason why my sons do their show on Wednesdays. It's the reason why I do this show, so that we can touch base with young people older people, and we can pass on knowledge. And it doesn't have to be a blood tie. It doesn't have to be something where you have to be the son or daughter of a person, right? But the fact that we do it, okay, I still got more questions up in here. Sean Anthony, why is voodoo been so perverted? Before, it was just finding medicines out in the wild without anybody knowing what it was, but now it's related to demons and devil worship far more than it used to be back in the day. So here's the thing with what we call voodoo. Um, Africans have always been spiritual, right? They have always been spiritual. The problem arose, right, when people were being repressed, right? Repressed. We call it voodoo. The other word for it is voodoo, but they were being repressed. The problem also is it is based voodoo, the idea of it is based holistically on white fear. On white fear. Um, the spirituality of Africans mixed with the European Catholic, you know, uh, beliefs that were imposed on the slaves by whites, and playing with those ideas, right, to scare people. It is not so it's not a okey doke that most of it is blamed on Haiti. Haiti had the Haitian Revolution, and much of the fear that was put upon by Napoleon's men and the French came from the idea that, okay, these blacks, these savages are using devil magic to turn away the most powerful military forces in the world and beat them. And so they warped the culture of saying that that's what this is. Now, in order to keep the fear alive and to scare people from trying to come back and harm them or fight them again, right? The Haitians and the people who were over in Haiti and over in the islands, right? They took spirituality from Benin, from Ghana, from Togo, from Nigeria, right? That's the Asia, the Awa, the Fan, different people of West Africa, and they syncretized the spirituality of their people and combined it with Roman Catholicism to scare everyone. And now, over time, it has been manipulated and migrated into full-on witchcraft. Now, I'm not telling you that this is not an evil thing, but what I am saying is that the initial purpose of it was to generate fear, and it still does. In fact, the story Voodoo's Not for Sale, voodoo is described as a servant going out in the wild and picking up a herb that cures a boy's blindness. Well, and that's the thing. So herbalism, spirituality, and everything else, right, has been turned and askewed to make it seem all evil. There are parts of it that have been pushed to be evil. If you look at what Papa Doc did in Haiti for decades, he used the idea of voodoo to scare people by doing murderous things, cutting people's heads off, pulling out intros, all of these different things. Because what does it do? He used the very fear that was the purpose of turning voodoo as a fear for Europeans, but he turned it back onto the people. And even today, when we watch movies and things like that, the first thing we see is a black man doing voodoo, right? Dressed in the traditional voodoo costumes and stepping around with voodoo dolls and talking about zombies, all these different things that come out of it. But the fact of the matter is, it was not always that way, and some of it is been pulled in, right, and taken, like the herbalism that you're talking about, Sean Anthony, is not necessarily voodoo, but it can be pulled into that because certain herbs and certain things can be used to kill and harm, and they were. They were. That was a very good question. Very good question. I like that question. I mean, in that case, couldn't what Vladimir Impalat did be considered? Well, yeah. I mean, anything that. But here's the difference with voodoo, right? The difference with voodoo has become that it has become this entity of its own that has scared people, right? Um, People believing that they can call their ancestors down to enact some kind of vengeance on people. People using dances and music, and they chant, and as I said, dolls, and they create potions and they create talismans. So they combine that Catholicism and that witchcraft and paganism all together, and what it's become is a horrible um a horrible I won't even say religion, practice that has been used to harm, and the historical understanding of it has been lost. And you need to understand historical understanding of it so that you can separate and understand that there are parts of it that were never intended to be harmful. It was to cure, but there are parts of it that have been accepted and migrated. Oh, sorry, um, to allow people to harm, and that's the big thing. Is there a difference between those that practice voodoo and those that are witch doctors, or is the term witch doctor a slur for those? So the term witch doctor is not necessarily a voodoo term. You know, we call people, anybody that is African and dances around is some type of witch because it's paganist. Um, just like you had the holy man in the indigenous culture. But the difference between it all is that when the I'll give an example, and it's a great question because here's the thing: when the indigenous people in the Americas pulled out the holy man and he danced around just like you would see these so-called voodoo men, and they had dances and rain dances that are very, very similar when you look at them and what they were designed to do. It is pageantry that actually scared people. And I'm not even going to say that it is no religious connotation or power to it, because the power comes from the fear that it creates. When there have been Indian massacres in the Americas because the white man was so afraid of Indian rain dancing or spirit dancing that he killed and murdered men, women, and children. When the Haitian Revolution happened and they were killing men, women, and children to run the French out of Haiti, the French and the Europeans never forgot that. And they came up with stories of these people eating flesh and everything else. And thus we create these voodoo creatures and these voodoo beliefs, right? Because we want to be able to instill fear. Now, that witch doctor or voodoo man or Baron Samedi or whoever you want to call him, right? These people are accepted voodoo figures that they use, and they dress like them to instill a fear, to instill a psychological fear. So again, it is a misunderstanding. It started as a misunderstanding and then it got used as a weapon, and now it has become a weapon that is being utilized against our own people. And we continue to evolve voodoo and verdun. We continue to add witchcraft and things to it for fertility, people burning things. We continue to create new rituals and new offerings and new things to grow its power. And we forget that those herbs and those ingredients, like Sean Anthony was saying, they initially weren't for that. They were to heal. But we've combined all of it in order to fight off white fear, white racist, vindictive, murderous fear, and turned it internally against ourselves. These are good questions. So yeah, it's kind of quirky. It's kind of loony, but it does exist and it is still happening. I didn't think we would be talking about voodoo nights. See, that's the way this thing works, right? Um, always some crazy thing. You're talking about Vlad the Impaler drinking blood and posting folks up on posts and um, cutting folks' heads off and scaring women and children. Yeah, I mean, if you can do something so violent to keep people away, it's an effective tool. But then it becomes a part of myth, folklore, and belief. Vlad the Impaler becomes Dracula, right? Getting natural herbs and things to heal and do stuff becomes voodoo because we want to be able to scare people from coming back over here and harming us. You're angry like our college students across the country. Well, let me tell you, I assume you're talking about the Palestinian issue. Um, we have the right. Everybody has the right to protest. That is your constitutional right. Now, people don't have to agree with what you protest for. They don't have to like it. But you have that right. And I will say that when it comes down to war, America has always been one of the countries that has utilized its right to protest, to say we don't agree with financing these tactics, wars, or whatever. So I get it, Eric. Um, it's bad. Um, but I will say something too. People need to learn how to protest. I saw one young lady, I forget what college it was. She said that they had been negotiating with the school authority and with they had gone in and gave the demands of what they wanted during the protest. That's how you do protest. You know, you go in and you tell people this is what we're protesting for, this is what we expect, and we have the right. And don't fall to agent provocateurs. If you don't know what an agent provocateur is, those are the people who show up at your rally or at your protest and incite violence. Those are the people who hold up signs saying, I'm for Hamas. Those are the people who come in, and they're usually hired by the other side to stir up trouble so that your protest goes away from being a peaceful civic exercise to being a violent, or they claim it to be a violent stand, simply because no one knows who's there. when we talked about the civil rights movement, I remember about a year ago, and I was talking about agent provocateurs, and I think I put out a video, and I was saying that agent provocateurs, in order to prevent that, what the SCLC did, what they did in the Black Civil Rights Movement is they met before they ever went out to protest. They had designs on what you would wear, who was going to be a part of our rally. So everybody knew whoever was wearing this was a part of us. If this person didn't have that, they're probably an agent and they shouldn't be here. And you have people using agent provocateurs in this situation right now. Because every night on the news, you hear people say, oh, they incited violence and they were cursing people out and they were saying violent things. Who was saying violent things? The movement has to stand up against agent provocateurs and say, they're not a part of us. We're not with them. People fall, they creep into these situations solely to be malicious, and they get paid for it. They get paid for it. Yes, they have done it during every movement. Even when you had the union rallies of the early 1900s, right? They had people who went in and called, we're going to fight. And then it becomes a riot. And once it becomes a riot, we can clear everybody out of here. So I understand the anger, but we have to keep our heads on what it is that we're doing. You know, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, there's some things that are going on even with that. We talked about how my sons were talking the other day about TikTok and what they're doing with that. It seems as if free speech is under attack again, as it will always be, because America continually tells people that we are a country of free speech as long as you speak the way we want you to speak. And we have to really scream loud to be heard. So I get it, Eric. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? Any other questions? Oh, you put FBI. Yeah, I posted something the other day. Look, I am so tired of J. Edgar Hoover's name being on different buildings in this country. I'm so tired of it. Take that man's name off these buildings, people. This man did nothing for justice. And we put his name on buildings in different states, and of course the FBI building, like he's some kind of bastion of freedom and justice. And he was a decrepit weirdo who sent murderous letters to Martin Luther King Jr., undermined the civil rights movement, got who knows how many people killed with his COINTELPRO program. Get this man's name off these buildings. In your humble opinion, can African Americans be guilty of cultural appropriation? In what way? In what way? You talking about hair? That's a loaded question, Mike, because I'm going to give you the reason why it's loaded. It's loaded because here's the thing. Genetically, everything comes from black. You can't get black from white. So what is appropriated? If we're talking about hair, looking the way we look, there are black people of all different shades, colors, and everything else, but they're still black because they got black parents. By the laws of the land and the way people feel and the way they've isolated our races as a false separation. If we're talking about culture, right, then that is another loaded question, because what influenced American culture, right? I've told you all before, when W.B. Du Bois wrote his book, The Gift of Black Folks, he listed all of these things that Black people gave, right? From spirituality, from food, the way we cook our foods, to the way we even create different machinations and utilities and utensils to make our lives better. So anybody, it could be argued that the appropriation, you've taken that from these people because they're the ones that created it. Well, we got to keep masses food cold, so we got to find a way to take ice or take stuff to keep that food cold, right? These Black innovations that were born out of a necessity for service people that now we see everybody using in their recipes and their utensils and everything else. So it's always a loaded question because of the influence that African Americans have had on so many cultures, so many different things in this country and worldwide. So, but that's, at least that's my thought on it. I'm with a colonizer. That might be cultural appropriation. No, I don't think so. It's fine. Look, there's no white person in this country. I argue with a person a couple of years ago. If you've been here any amount of at least 3 generations, there's probably Black in you, because people obviously don't want to live as slaves, and they pass the quadroons and different things. They pass, and then they marry into other families, and so you have a very mixed society. That's why when people take these DNA tests and they say, "Oh man, I got African in me," yeah, and by the level of what you have, when you look at your genetics, you realize, man, okay, that's within a generation or 2 generations. That means somebody in your family, in your tree of ancestry. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. So it's important that we understand that, and that we give credit to what's due. But yeah, that's why I laugh at cultural appropriation and how people say that works, because I mean, who's appropriating what? Almost everything this country was built off the backs of Black people. That's not a debatable issue. And they influence music, food, clothing, everything. Everything was influenced by how they kept those people pushed down. Which is what it is. I've never been really comfortable with the term African American. So I had a guy tell me this a couple of years ago, and he said the same thing. Like, he felt that he didn't understand the term African American. And I told him, I said, well, here's the thing. Before Columbus, everybody was a European. Everybody in Europe was a European. Now, they may have been French, German, they may have been whatever, British, and they may have had that association, but everybody kind of looked like everybody, right? So they might say, I'm Firenze, right? They may say, I'm Italian. They may say that I'm British, right? And that was their understanding. But when Columbus came over, they realized that there were other people who looked like other people, right? When they went down and they looked at the Africans, right? They called the Africans Africans, Ethiopians. Everybody had a name. But when they came over to the Americas, in order to differentiate, people became a Italian American, a French American, a German American. But for a long time, if you were Black over here, you were, for the lack of a better word, a ninja. They didn't care where you came from. They didn't care that your family may have come from Benin. They didn't care that your family may have been from Chad or Nigeria. Nobody cared. So where this person was a Irish American and he had his culture and his Americanism put on paper and told who he was, the African was the descendants of Africa were denied that. You were a boy, a gal, a ninja, anything but that. And Malcolm X tells a story that during the Civil Rights Movement, an African could come from Africa fully in African garb and go down to the South. He had a friend who dressed up like an African and proved it, and go sit at a restaurant and eat at the counter without a problem, fully Black in Mississippi, because he was considered to be something else, an African, not a ninja. So, and then he sat there and said, man, you all let me sit here. She's like, oh, you're not one of them. So we came with the idea of making sure, well, they're going to treat Africans, people from Middle East, better than they treat the American Negro. Then we need to tell ourselves that we are something of Africa. And that's why we have gotten to such a point where we call ourselves African Americans. And so a lot of us affirm that I'm an African American. This is African American history. Other than just being Black, other than just being a ninja, other than just being a boy or a gal, right? Other than just being a pickaninny, to give you something different. So the term African American is a very old Pan-African term. You could go back and hear Marcus Garvey call people African American. W.B. Du Bois called people African American. You can go and look and see Jesse Jackson, I think, brought it back into modern time. But Afro-American or Afro-American was just another term to give us a different identity, because everybody was so quick, people would slip, right? If you on the television calling folks Negro, it ain't too hard for you to slip and call somebody a ninja, right? So we want to give them something different to say. A lot of them didn't want to say that. And then they told us, well, yeah, different Black folks came out and said also, well, I'd never been to Africa. How you gonna call me an African American? But your genetics are from Africa. Tell me how many times you've heard an Italian American roll around and say, I ain't never been to Italy. My family was here in the mob. Now they're proud of their heritage. Or an Irishman in Chicago, or a Polish person, right? I'm a Polish American. There is a pride in telling you what their culture is and then telling you that they're an American. And it has been used in a very, very racist way, even back then. Jewish Americans, There were presidents who said, matter of fact, one of the most racist presidents that we had, Woodrow Wilson, hated the idea of somebody being blah, blah American. You're just an American. But no, they weren't, because you didn't treat them like Americans. You treated them like the other. And so this is why we have those terms and kind of how we've moved into that. I'm proud of their heritage because they have the ability to identify where they came from. Yeah, they are. They're very, and you know, when we look at when they established the Columbus holiday, the congressman who established it said it will give Italian and Spanish Americans a sense of pride to know that their ancestors discovered things that no one had discovered before. Well, that's a lie. But they wanted to be able to fashion a device or inspiration for a group of kids so that they could be proud of themselves. Because at the time, coming out of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we want to be able to establish Italians and people of that ilk to be more white and American. America has always been crabs in a barrel. The Irish were considered to be the ninjas of Europe. And they came over and they established themselves. And they still talk about it to this day, how they made themselves legitimate in America. From being killed coming off the ships, by signing up to fight in the Civil War to free the slaves for the Union, and then getting mad after the Civil War and participating in murders and killings. And even during the Civil War, during the draft riots in New York. But they made themselves legitimate. What does that mean? They made themselves white Americans. Some folks don't understand being an indentured servant versus a slave. This might be a topic for another show. Yeah, I have often talked about that. I don't like chattel slavery, right, is different than indentured. Indentured has an end. I am basically a servant until I'm not. And then many times I'm paid to be that servant. Chattel slavery is not like that. Chattel slavery is everything that comes out of your body is mine. Right? That's what that is. And so I try very hard to get people to understand that, yeah, every year, I've been saying it in the last couple of years, and that's probably a good thing. But every year I would see these folks, man, who would pop out, right, and put that whole, the Irish were slaves too. What are you talking about? The Irish never had to deal with partus sequitur ventrum. They never had to deal with that. And I always often joke, I was like, partus sequitur ventrum is not a Harry Potter phrase. Partus sequitur ventrum meant everything that comes out of that female slave, no matter who put it in it, no matter who created that child with her, whether they be white, black, Asian, indigenous, whatever, right? I own that. We're talking about abortion laws and things right now. But what partus sequitur ventrum really means is the birth follows the womb. It is one of the oldest doctrines established in the Americas. It was passed in the 1600s. We own what comes out of her womb. That is not indentured. That is not something that you get your way out of. I'm a slave, but my children aren't a slave. No, that is complete other domination. And it is one of the most evil legal doctrines that was ever passed in the history of the world. But we don't know that. If you make partus sequitur ventrum part of your language, part of your understanding when people say that, because I often hear that. Oh, slavery was all over the world. Well, everybody had slaves. Slavery was this and slavery was that. They didn't have that. They had kinship. They had military slavery. They had all these different types of slavery that you could call slavery, but it was servitude. It was the Americas that said, no, we want what's coming out of there, and we want to own that. And whatever comes out of what comes out of your womb, and so forth, perpetual slavery. You're going to inherit the slavery of your mother, because that is, and this is something very significant for our LGBTQ people who are out here who think that there's a difference legally. Here's the thing. They knew that by nature, all life comes out of a woman. So they put that doctrine on Black women. She was the one, not the man, not any of the men, her. So that meant that if Master slept with her, anybody slept with her that created a child, we own that. It is hereditary, it is legal. Great question, great comment, Eric. With all the knowledge that you have about African Americans, is there any one thing or event that stands out or resonates personally with you? Yes. I want to do a thing on Red Summer, Mike. Red Summer to me started a whole new point in America. It stands out to me because if you look at Red Summer and you understand kind of what was going on, America changed. In 1919, about 2 years after we had established really what we know to be income tax, America got very, very violent in a way that it had been violent before, but it became acceptably modernly violent because this was after World War I. And you would think we were in a modernized world. But dozens of cities all over the country, in the Midwest, in the North, in the West, in the South, Black people were killed. I don't care what they tell you, we don't even know the number of people who were killed. It is one of the reasons why many of our families migrated out of different parts of the country to escape the amount of violence that was going on, Chicago being one of the examples. People had migrated from the South to come to Chicago for a better idea, and then they were being killed. Carter G. Woodson talks about in Baltimore and Washington, walking down the street and having to run into buildings and get away because they were hunting down Black boys to murder in the street. But we don't teach about 1919. We don't teach about post-World War I racist tensions and understand that that's just a little over 100 years ago. And so people who we grew up with, right, had grandparents and aunties and folks who were closely related to that time and saw Black people being murdered. So I think that part, that history, because it's so modern, it stands out to me as something that we need to delve more into, something that we need to kind of cover more, because it started at the beginning of one year, and we call it Red Summer. But the truth of the matter is, even after 1919, they were still doing it. It was just the inciting moment. We can kill, we can murder like this on a grand scale. We can go into ghettos and murder these people on a grand scale, and nobody will ever know how many we killed. From Arkansas to Chicago, New York, Mississippi, California. You ask, was it a purge of black? When I watch those movies of Purge, I kind of feel, yes, it was a time to put black people in their place, because black men had gone over in World War I and they had fought and liberated. And they came back with a sense of pride. Well, we got to stomp that pride down. We got to stop you from thinking you're more than what you are. So we're going to come kill you, your families. We're going to murder y'all when you come tell us you deserve to vote. You deserve rights. You deserve a better job. We're going to make you understand you still a boy, a gal, a ninja. It's a mess. Red Summer 1919. So yeah, it does stand out to me. It bothers me. I don't think most of us really know about it. Or if we do know about it, we only know certain parts of it. So it's something that I think we need to talk about more. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate you all joining me today. I think that you all did, you had some really, really great questions on here tonight. And I really, really appreciate the support. Please help us get more support, gain more people, and talk more about these different things. Mike, I may do a show about it again. I think I've done one before, but I may go more into it again, because I think it is a huge part of our legacy that we need to really retouch with and really try to get back into. I know we don't teach it like we should. I've been saying this for years, and I want to make sure that I'm one of those ones that I teach it with honesty, because we talk about Black Wall Street all the time and all these different things, and those things are important, but we really need to start focusing and talking sometimes about Red Summer and understanding how it hurt our ancestors and our people. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna get ready to get on out of here and move forward with the rest of my night. I got some things that are going on. I got to work tonight. So, but I really appreciate you guys joining me. And please, this time period I think is working pretty well, and I appreciate it. Yeah, man. I'm always there, for questions. I want to see my back guest on your show. Everybody is invited on the show. You all know that anytime. And they still say the smell of blood lingers there. Yeah, it's horrible. There are places in Chicago that were greatly affected by the riots of 1919 that you can go and look historically, but people won't really talk about it, right? At least it took me many years to realize how many people were affected by it, especially in Chicago and in other parts of the country. It was really bad. So, all right, I'm out of here. Y'all be blessed until God willing. We'll see you all next week. And we will be able to go further and do more on this program. All right. I got a book that I'm working on, so I will let you all keep you all abreast on the book of when that's going to come out and when Tina has a book out. Tina has a book out. Let me say that my wife has a brand new book out. Well, I think it'll be out by next week. You can go on Lulu. You can get the hard copy of the book, and she'll put that out to you all on mental health and on the things she's worked on for the last couple of years. And hopefully you all will support her and her venture for this book, because it is information that is greatly needed. And I think that you all will benefit from it. We will be doing things on Erudition to promote it also, but want you all to know that that is coming, and you will see that out here probably I believe by the beginning of next week. She'll start putting out links for you all to go on and get the book and acquire that brand new book. I wish I didn't have it up here with me, or I would have shown you that book tonight. Teddy, if you're still on, go grab that book if it's sitting downstairs, so we can at least show the cover. And then I'll get on off of here for you all, because I want people to definitely, those of you who are watching the recording, I want you to be able to go understand what you're getting and how that's going to look, at least the cover of it, so you know what's coming. I think it's a really good book. She put some time into it, so. She put some time into her book, so you all, it's a good book. You know, I want you to when she puts this out next week, I want you to make sure that you support my wife and what she's trying to do on her journey for mental health and getting people to understand generational wealth and mental health and how that all works together. All right, I'm out of here. Definitely want you guys, like I said, say thanks to you again. Let me get out of here. Let me click my button and move on. I got some things I gotta do, so I gotta go. But you all be blessed, and until next week, we hope to see you again. Thank you.